All right, welcome to another episode of Faith Gateway Live. My name is Mark Smith, and I'm your host and the general manager of faithgateway.com, a site dedicated to helping you grow and share your faith. Today's special program is titled 7 Keys for Publishing Success, and we have two publishing experts with us on our panel today. Now, Matt Bahar is the Senior Vice President and Publisher for the W Publishing Group, an imprint of Thomas Nelson. His specific focus is in the area of nonfiction, and he works with a wide variety of best-selling authors such as Billy Graham, Andy Andrews, Jenny Allen, Emerson Eggerichs, Richard Stearns, and many more. Among his many New York Times bestsellers is Heaven is for Real, which recently passed 10 million copies worldwide and was a major movie release for Sony Pictures in 2014. Our other guest is Pete Nicolai. Pete Nicolai has been in the book publishing business since 1991, working in a variety of roles, including sales, product development, and management for Thomas Nelson. He is currently the Director of Publishing Services for HarperCollins Christian Publishing and the publisher of Westboro Press, which is the self-publishing division at HarperCollins. And he's been there since 2009. So welcome, Matt and Pete.
Thanks.
So I want to talk to the viewers here during the live chat. Be sure to tweet in your questions for Matt and Pete and use the @FaithGateway #AspiringAuthor. And I'm looking here at the chat box, and I can see there's already a lot of questions, so that's great. So with that, Pete, I know you wanted to tee it off for Matt and talk about platform, the importance of platform.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. And let me start also by thanking Matt for taking some time to share his perspective with us on how things in publishing are evolving. We've seen a lot of changes in the last few years as ebook sales have grown dramatically. Readers are shifting some of their purchases away from bricks and mortar stores to online bookstores. Publishers are consolidating. Titles by self-published authors are regularly showing up on bestseller lists. All these changes are impacting book publishing, and so we created this webinar series in partnership with Faith Gateway to provide authors with the opportunity to hear from insiders and ask some questions. If folks will scroll down a little bit on their screen, they'll see there's a Learn More button at the bottom, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. It's a special offer from Westboro Press that we'll be giving you some details on in a few minutes, but just wanted to point that out. Yeah, so to get things started, Matt, would you mind sharing a bit of your background, what you've seen, how publishing's changing, and how it seems to be headed from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely, and great to be with you, so thank you all for giving me this opportunity, and I love working with authors, obviously, with what I do, and love working with aspiring authors, so can't wait to get to some of the questions and see what we can discuss and accomplish, but yeah, I've been in publishing for 15 years, and for a while was in both publishing and music going back 25 years in artist management and record production, and then got more into the literary world with agenting and doing some writing, and then eventually joining Thomas Nelson as a publisher, I guess, 7.5 years ago, so early 2007. And yeah, so much has changed, not only in the past 7 years, but even since I started in literary work. There's always a great column in the back of each Publisher's Weekly, a lot of times written by a newer author or publisher or librarian. It kind of runs the gamut. And a couple of weeks ago, it was an author named Susan Scarf Merrill. And I love what she said in terms of the evolving of the publishing industry. The only thing that hasn't evolved since the year 2000 is that you can still check your Amazon numbers obsessively and still not be in the world they mean.
Yeah.
That's about the only thing that hasn't changed. But one of the things that we're going to talk about today eventually is not only the importance of platform, but how it combines with great content, because the days of someone simply handing a manuscript over to a publisher and say, okay, go promote it, go publish this, make it happen, those days are over. And it is absolutely a partnership now. And whether you are self-publishing or whether you're attempting to get an agent or working with a publisher, all of those things that we're going to cover a little bit, platform is absolutely key. And good content is simply not enough. And I think a lot of times what holds people back is just a little bit of fear in terms of building their platform and going at it full bore. And I would venture to say that the only thing holding you back in anything regarding writing is tradition and fear. Tradition, thinking that someone else has already done this, proven that it doesn't work, you just don't think there's anything there for you, or fear that you're going to fail, and so you don't jump in. But building your platform is absolutely key. There are hundreds of thousands of ISBNs introduced to our literary system every year, literally hundreds of thousands. And so now that self-publishing has become so prominent and available, it's fantastic. But you're also up against that many more people who are out there publishing, not to mention what's happening with us at the publishers. And so you want to build that platform with something that people want and are interested in, and it's not just Facebook, it's not just Twitter, it's not just Goodreads or Book Riot. You really need all of them, and then get people talking. You know, just as an encouragement to folks, real quickly, if you haven't heard about this new project that happened through Kickstarter, Biblioteca had nothing to do with this, but it's been amazing to watch over the last few weeks. And here was a man who thought that there could be a different way of presenting the Bible that had different margins. It didn't have all those numbers in it for verses. It read more like a book and was separated into more bite-sized books. And so 4 separate books read like a novel and presented in that way, Biblioteca. He started a Kickstarter campaign, and he needed $37,000 to make it happen. Well, that began to get talked about, and he shut off the Kickstarter campaign 4 days ago after collecting $1.4 million, and is now going to manufacturing. And that's just one item and one example of someone who builds a platform and then acts upon it. In this way, he's doing it through self-publishing, but it could have just as easily been through a publisher. But building your platform is absolutely key. And what I'd close with, and I'll pitch it back to you, Pete, is there are so many resources out there for you. No one probably does it better than Michael Hyatt, who actually used to be my boss when he was here at Thomas Nelson as CEO. I specifically didn't even go to his site ahead of this webinar because I thought I would unknowingly pull a Senator John Walsh and start plagiarizing. But he is absolutely the best at building platform. But Michael Hyatt, Dan Miller from 48 Days to the Work You Love, there are so many out there that can help you, and you need to digest that as best that you can.
Yeah, that's great insight. And all that talk about platform, I guess it kind of begs a question. You mentioned the Kickstarter phenomenon. It seems like there's quirky little things like that that take off and everybody loves to point to. But in this day and age, you know, isn't the success of the book determined by the quality of the content? Where does that come into play?
Well, it is determined by the quality of the content in terms of if it's really going to take off in a major way once it gets traction. But quality content in and of itself will not create traction. And if there is anything that will help you and helps us on a daily basis as we analyze books, it's getting rid of the myth that great content equals success. And I would venture to say that for many people viewing this right now, if you were to think about some of your favorite books, not just the last summer novel you read that was so great from Baldacci or whatever, but your truly favorite books that have moved you, only a few were huge bestsellers. Others, a friend recommended it to you or whatnot. Some of the best content ever published has not sold well, and that's the same as here at a publisher. So great content alone will not do that, nor will your great content without any platform or proper setup convince a publisher or an agent to just go out there and make it happen, because as Pete, you started out by saying, those days are kind of over where that just occurs naturally.
So what happens today then? An author has a halfway decent platform, they've got a topic perhaps that has a high felt need. What happens at that point? And why do they turn to the publisher now? How is the publisher going to partner with that author to maximize the impact?
Yeah, well, the publisher will partner with the author, and keep in mind too, I think this was one of the questions that is come in terms of manuscript solicitation and whatnot. At W Publishing and Thomas Nelson, we actually work exclusively with agents. We don't work directly with authors in terms of signing manuscripts. We only work with agents because we trust them. They help sift through things for us, and there would simply be no way to analyze all of those manuscripts that come in. So we work exclusively with agents, and then, as you know, Pete, we're always looking at what you're signing over there at Westbow on the self-publishing side as to something that might be able to make the leap over to traditional publishing. Yeah, even with those that come in through agents, we just had an editorial board this week where my entire team comes together and we analyze the best proposals that have come in over the last 2 to 3 weeks. And we had 10 proposals. Only 2 of those did we recommend taking to our pub board, where we sit down with our sales executives and actually decide if we're going to make an offer. And 2 of the proposals that we turned down, absolutely hands down, were the best writers of the bunch.
Wow.
But they had no platform, and they had seemingly no real drive to build the platform. Okay. You may have 784 Facebook friends, but I want to see you type in that statement that my goal is to have 10,000 Facebook friends by October of 2014 or October of 2015. There has to be a feel that you're going to work as hard on it as we're going to work. And then the publisher's real benefit to an author is when it starts to sell, because that's when you want to keep that flywheel spinning. And at that point, you really can't beat a traditional publisher.
No, that's certainly been what we found out even with Westbow. Is we've helped thousands of authors self-publish their books, but that means, to a large extent, it means it's put on Amazon, on the other online retailers. It's available from the major distributors. If somebody walks into a bookstore, they can order that book. But it takes quite a bit of additional effort to get it into your bricks and mortar bookstores, and that's where I know our HarperCollins Christian sales team, they're the best in the industry at putting as many books as possible into bookstores, so when the publicity starts and it's time to rock and roll, things are in place and ready to sell. And yeah, that's one of the things we're learning on the Westbow side too, is how can we imitate some of that? How can we help authors begin to catch a vision for how to make that transition to the traditional side when they're ready? And I guess go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to say, you're right, and that discoverability is so important, and it's getting harder and harder as the days go by to be discoverable. Traffic is way down in stores. And we just don't have as many outlets as we once had. And so, all of us are finding other ways to sell books, and I think publishing is very healthy. But discoverability for a brand new author is extremely difficult. And that's why you want to build momentum somewhere. Concentrate just on your local community. One of the best sellers that we were privileged to work on was an incredible book from Ron Hall and Denver Moore called Same Kind of Different as Me.
Yeah.
And, that's, 7 years old now?
Sure.
But the reason I bring it up is because those authors, Ron especially, was tireless at making that book a success, and he was not going to give up until he did. And that's all he thought about for years. And so he got so much momentum going in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that finally, even though we were pushing Barnes & Noble corporate to really take it in with some type of major campaign and they were resisting, there was so much happening in Dallas for Barnes & Noble that they couldn't resist it anymore and realized they had to jump in. Everyone is interested in something that's going to create momentum and create traffic. And so even if it's only in your town or in your community or in your state, make that happen. And that's why, we can get into this whenever you like, but that's why you should never be afraid of self-publishing. And as a traditional publisher, hear from me that I really like it when someone has self-published because it shows initiative and gives me something to analyze in terms of what has happened out there. So it is a very good thing.
Yeah, we've tried to go above and beyond and looking at all the Westbow titles every month, and just to let folks know, that's one of the things I do as the publisher of Westbow, is looking at all those titles every month, looking at the sales and the reviews all over the place, and then sending a list of top titles to Matt and his team, to the rest of the Nelson team, the Zondervan team, and it provides some great insight, and we've had several of those titles acquired, and it just really is a great way to begin to make a name for yourself as you show, as you demonstrate that you have what it takes, that your book has what it takes to succeed in the marketplace out there.
Yeah.
So, maybe we should jump back a little, do a little bit of the nitty-gritty work, the detail work. What is it that you're looking for in the materials you receive? Proposal, outline, sample writing, stuff like that. What is it that causes something to stand out when an agent sends something your way?
Yeah, that is, and it's so true, because a lot of times people, and I don't think I'm unique in this, people that are in my chair across the industry, may only spend 10 minutes looking through a proposal and deciding whether or not it's worth going beyond 10 minutes. And so there needs to be something there that is grabbing. And I think there are key components of a good proposal and a good outline. And there are a lot of agents that don't even really understand this, in my opinion. And those are different from what you have for yourself. Like if you're preparing your book or you're preparing for self-publishing, the components of a great outline, you want to start with the objectives. You want to start with your target audience. Start with what you want those takeaways to be. Those are all very important things, and you build it from there. Unfortunately, I would say 7 out of 10 of the proposals that I receive, even from agents, they'll start out with all of that, and I don't want to get into all of that, because as far as I'm concerned, you're not running for office. You're trying to write a book. I want to see your book. I don't want to hear you talk about your book. Mm-hmm. So for me, the first thing that I want to see is an overview that's broken up into 2 or 3 parts. So page 1, give me a 1-sentence description of your book, a 1-paragraph description of your book, and then if you had a half of a page, or if you want to think in your mind, much like just the back cover copy of a book, what might that say? So 1 sentence, 1 paragraph, and then a half page. After that, get into the table of contents and the chapter summaries. Break down exactly what's going to happen in each chapter, so that someone could scan those few pages and have a feel for what that book is going to be about, but they're hearing things in your own words. Then you can get into here's who I think the audience is, the objectives for the book, and of course a sample chapter. The more the better if you're unknown. A sample chapter or 2 at the end to show the writing. But I want to see the overview, and I want to see the writing, because without that, none of the rest really means anything. And if I sound passionate about this, it's because I am. And too many authors make this mistake of going into this long cover letter and this big description of their book and why it's so important and why it's there. And you're just setting yourself up. It's like when you see all of your favorite movie reviewers going crazy over a movie, and you walk into it with these high expectations, and the movie doesn't meet the expectations, and you're disappointed. Whereas if you had never seen the reviews, you might walk out of that movie saying, you know what, that wasn't too bad. Mm. So get me involved in your content, then come back and tell me once I'm interested who you're going to go after.
I'm sure all of this can seem a bit overwhelming to your aspiring author out there, but we've mentioned agents throughout this conversation, and they really become a key partner for that aspiring author if they're going to go down that traditional path. How important do you think it is? Obviously it's very important to get a great agent, but how do you go about doing that and identifying an agent that is somebody that would be a good partner for you as an author? Mm-hmm.
And I would, in a lot of cases, as an aspiring author, I would pursue both simultaneously. And the both that I'm talking about is the self-publishing route, while also trying to find an agent. It's true that at times it can be just as difficult to get accepted by an agent, as it is sometimes with a traditional publishing house.
Mm.
But that's where that initiative comes in. If you're really committed to that content and believe that it's unique and helpful, then stay at it. Eventually, you're going to find someone. Google is a wonderful thing, and it's amazing what pops up on the first page, even if you put in Christian literary agents, and what pops up in terms of information and who to contact, where to go after that. And the same thing for mainstream literary agents. If you do your homework, you can absolutely find those contacts. But I would also, before sending anything out, you always want to make something unique, right? And so do a little bit of research on these agents. They've published books. They're on social media, many of them. You know, I've got two agents in my mind right now that couldn't be more different than each other in terms of their personality, what they like, and what they publish. So find that out ahead of time. You know, don't send something to Agent Greg that is only going to appeal to Agent Dan. And you don't have to be specific with them that you're making an individual, but just know that going in, so that you can get more interest that way, and I think you will.
Is it basically the same material that you might send to a publisher? Is that what you're going to be sending to the agent? It's your proposal. It's the material you talked about.
Yeah, it is, and a good agent is going to help you craft that proposal for a publisher. But having those elements already there shows him or her that this is going to be less work, because they're no different than a publisher. If they look at your content and are really excited about that, or think that's something that they could sell, the next thing they're going to be analyzing, whether they're honest about it or not, is how much work that's going to be, and do the two things work together to where, okay, I want to sign this individual. And if you've already put in the work of preparing a proposal that they're going to merely have to adapt or create suggestions for, then you're far ahead of the game. But just sending a galley copy or a full manuscript to an agent, everyone kept telling me in my family and in my circle and at work that I should write a book. I finally did. I finally gave in, and so here it is. Yeah. Everyone's telling me it's great. Let me know. That's not going to go anywhere.
How long do you think, you mentioned going down both paths at the same time. Is it a matter of, setting kind of a deadline for acquiring an agent, for hiring an agent, and then shifting your focus completely over to self-publishing, or is there some type of timeline you should have in mind?
I think the timeline only depends on your master objectives as an author, and how long you want to go at that. Because if let's say someone's master objective is just to make a little money from selling some books, and there's nothing wrong with that. It may sound odd, but there's nothing wrong at all with I want to sell this many books. I feel like I've got enough of a constituency to do that, and I can get a good margin self-publishing, and that's what I want to do. That's one objective. Another objective would be, I'm going to sell what I can, but I'm going to self-publish, and I'm going to find the money to print 5,000 books, and I'm going to give 4,000 of those away to get people talking.
Right.
And, I'm also going to be preparing my proposal for an agent at the same time, and doing it that way. So I don't think there's any time limit, nor should one hold back the other. The only thing I would say to that, Pete, is if you are really good at building your platform, and some of you definitely are, make sure you save the impact moment. That is crucial. So if you've got a great story that for whatever reason you've got a friend at Fox and Friends, or whatever the case may be, all of a sudden someone in terms of national PR is interested in that, don't agree to that too early, because it's very difficult to get on again.
Sure.
And I've seen a lot of authors, even established authors, that will they'll jump on PR momentum too quickly because a lot of people are interested, and they don't have a book out yet. Then when we finally get the book ready and get it out in the stores, they can't get back on those shows again. So save the impact.
Right, right. That's great advice. Well, before I know we've got looks like a lot of questions coming in, and before we get to those questions, I just want to let everybody know, I mentioned earlier we've got a special offer that we've worked out for those that are participating in this webinar. Westbow Press, we're the publishing services division of Thomas Nelson and Zondervan. We offer a full spectrum of services to help aspiring authors publish a professional book so that it has the chance to prove itself in the marketplace, as we've been talking about. And we're offering the webinar participants who click on the Learn More button that you see towards the bottom of the screen that you're on. Click on that screen today, and you'll have the opportunity to receive 40% off select Westbow publishing packages. So click on that button, and you'll have the opportunity to get 40% off. As we've been talking about, we're committed to bringing new voices to the market. In just slightly under 5 years, we've helped close to 5,000 authors publish their books, and a handful of those have gone on to be traditionally published authors, including Annie Downs, who I think, Mark, you mentioned she's coming up on another one of your webinars here pretty soon, one of your author chats. We also published William Searles, Sharon Garlow Brown. Our latest acquisition is David Charles Spurgeon, and we just have a wide variety of different authors. Those are just the ones that come to mind quickly, but it's not just Nelson and Zondervan. We've had authors picked up by other publishing houses too. So that's one of the things we really put a focus on. I sort through those reports, send it to Matt and his team, to the other acquisition teams at Nelson and Zondervan, and to a variety of agents that I work with on a regular basis. So self-publishing gives you the opportunity to demonstrate if you have what it takes to make it in the marketplace. If you have a manuscript you'd like to get published, or you just like to talk to somebody, one of our publishing consultants, we'd be happy to talk about your goals and what you think your next step should be. Click on that button for a 40% off on select Westbow publishing packages. And with that, I'd like to bring Mark back in. Mark, I'm sure there's a variety of questions. You want to voice out the first one there? Oh, I think, Mark, you're on mute. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. I want to apologize to our viewers. The response to this webinar has been pretty overwhelming, so our site actually was down for a while. It's back up. There's also a YouTube link in the Twitter feed, and many of you jumped on that, but apologize for that. And as you did mention, one of our first author chats we did was with Annie Downs, and we're doing another one next week. And she is one of those cases, that actually started at, self-publishing and went to traditional publishing. How did you, pick Annie out of the list? How did she pop out?
Well, it was we ran our regular monthly sales reports, and Annie's book was towards the top of that list. And then also for each of the books that shows up on that report, I head over to Amazon and I look at the reviews, and I look at some other review sites too. So I'm trying to find out, is the title selling well? How's the market responding? What are the reviews saying? And then I noticed Annie's book was doing well, so we connected her with an agent, and they pitched the book to several publishers, and Zondervan ended up being the one that acquired it. So, and that's kind of the way it works. It's working hard to get your book to sell and get good reviews on your book, and once it rises up to the top of that list, then we enter into conversations and start figuring out what are the next steps, what are your goals, what's your vision. There actually are a few self-published authors out there that, I hate to say it, they don't want to be traditionally published. They just, they've created something that they just want to have to put on a speaker's table or whatever the case might be, or distribute to their friends and family, and we understand that too. But we want to make sure, especially those titles that are making it to the top of the list, we're going to have those conversations and find out the best way to help them move forward as an author.
And Pete, let me jump in too on that, because we even have established authors that sometimes do both of those.
True.
Andy Andrews, for instance, who is one of my closest author relationships, in addition to the great books that we do with him, he still has items that he does on his own, books that he'll create on his own for his list, ebook only things. He's probably sold 600,000 of a book called Storms of Perfection, that has only been available as a self-published item. And so I think there has been this myth for far too long that self-publishing and traditional shall never meet and they don't like the other one. And really nothing could be farther from the truth. And in a world where it takes usually 6 to 12 touch points on average to get into a consumer's psyche on a book or any marketing product for that matter, as many places as possible is really important. And I noticed one question pop up on the side there. What do you mean by build a platform? Can you give an example? And what I mean is not only getting registered and being active on all of those social media hangouts and book hangouts, etc., but also whether it's a blog or a podcast or anything that is adding to the ongoing conversation and the culture. And the key there, one of the keys that we look for and that others will look for is the number of likes and shares. So just talking about Facebook for a moment, it's not just about how many friends perhaps you've been able to get, but when you put something out there, how many likes and shares do you have? In terms of established authors, go in and check out, say, Jen Hatmaker, and you'll see that she'll post something on her kids, but she'll get 12,000 likes and 4,000 people share it.
Wow.
That's an extreme example, but in your own world and in your own numbers, that means something. That's what you want to be growing. How much has it been shared? Usually what we recommend when it comes to talking about your book, for instance, whether it's self-published or whether it's traditional published, when you are interacting with your platform and building that as much as possible, probably no more than 1 out of every 4 posts, blog posts, Twitter messages, you name it, no more than 1 out of 4 dealing with that book. You don't want someone shutting you off because, my goodness, all they talk about is their book. But just a part of the normal. So about 25% usually good.
So I'm going to throw in a question about, there's so many different ways to build out a platform now, right? So you've got, you got Twitter and Facebook, traditional one, Instagram, and with Jefferson Bethke and his phenomenal following on YouTube, another example. Okay, so where do you start, right? Because if you're starting at square one, where would you put the focus today? Would it be on Facebook, Twitter? I mean, and that may vary, depending on somebody's strength in terms of, like with Bethke, he's got a strong presence, so he comes off great on YouTube, but.
Yeah, and it depends on the demographic of who you are writing for as well. Obviously, if it's something that is a little more middle age and older, Facebook is great. But if it is a young millennial, you're probably going to be better off on Instagram. And you want to hit both of those, but where is that going? A lot of the younger people today that we're seeing, and my marketing team is seeing, Twitter all of a sudden is being left behind. And Twitter still is extremely popular, but there are younger people that are leaving Twitter and Facebook in droves for Instagram and the next great thing. So try and follow those with your presence, and so that you always have it. And I mentioned earlier about self-publishing and then giving away a lot of books. That's another thing I can't recommend highly enough. Once you have the book ready, don't feel like you have to collect that dollar for every title. Give those books away. Andy Andrews, who I brought up, he probably gives away, and he's an established author, very successful, but he still probably gives away 8,000 to 10,000 books a year. Not only just seeding the market in certain ways, but anytime he's flying, he's giving a book out on the plane. Never stops. And in fact, so one of his favorite lines is he'll get in a conversation with the person next to him on the plane, and then he'll give him a book like The Traveler's Gift or The Noticer or something, and he'll say, "My wife loves this author." So, anything that builds that up and creates a conversation, and then start building your email list too.
So here's a question from JV Carr, who asks, are you saying that it's acceptable to query agents after a book is already self-published?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The agent is going to be looking for the same thing that we as publishers are looking for, and that is some sort of momentum, because again, it's not just about how good your content is. There has to be a way of getting that content out. So if if you printed 3,000 books and you've already sold 2,500 of them, and that was in some way dispersed more than just regionally, that's just one example. That's going to mean something to an agent. So you don't need to self-publish before approaching an agent, and not at all in any way, shape, or form. But it is perfectly acceptable to wait until you have that.
Yeah, in fact, on some of the titles that have come up on our top titles report, it doesn't take but 500 or 1,000 copies moving through retailers. Now, those are above and beyond the ones that the author is purchasing themselves for their own use. But once we start to see that 500 or 1,000 copies is moving through retailers, that's when we begin to have those conversations. Well, at 1,000 copies, you have by no means saturated the market in any way that would bother a publisher at all. In fact, a publisher loves to see that you've already moved 1,000 copies. That's a great sales number for a self-published title, and the publishers will be excited to talk to you about perhaps traditionally publishing that title.
Yeah, and even the word platform doesn't just mean the number of people that might be willing to network with you, but it can just mean someone who is aware of you and aware of what you do. And so if you are an aspiring author participating in this webinar, go to some writer conferences and seek to make your voice heard a little bit at those. We have an example similar to the Westville example, but from a writer conference, the Mount Hermon Writers Conference. A few years back, Jenny Allen went to from Austin. Jenny is one of our authors at W, and an agent was at that writer conference and was so taken by her authenticity and vulnerability and the way she talked about her Bible studies that he thought, I really think something is here. And so she didn't know anybody from Adam, went to this writer conference. The agent brings that to us. We start watching videos and start talking to people who had seen her in Austin, signed her a few years ago, and we just passed 250,000 units of her product here at Thomas Nelson. So find a way to get noticed.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, it's actually we're about 7 minutes over. So I'd like to, Pete, if you want to close with that offer that you mentioned
Sure.
at the beginning, and also too for FaithGate, as a bonus for staying this long, in the conference, and we appreciate everybody sticking with us here. There is a coupon code below at the Faith Gateway store. This coupon code is author30, and there's a button below for that. And Pete, tell what does somebody actually get? Like there's an offer there below, and learn more and stuff. What's going to happen then if they go ahead and do that?
Yeah, if they click that button, the Learn More button, and give us some contact information, they'll be able to enter into a conversation with one of our publishing consultants and just talk through the goals and the vision for the book and what you would like to have happen. We offer a full spectrum of services, everything from editing to cover design, interior design. We do just about any service that an author would need, but the 40% off is actually on three different publishing, I believe it's 3 different publishing packages that are listed on that page. So if you click on the Learn More button, you'll be directed to that page, and it tells you the particular packages. And each of those different packages, they include different levels of service so that you can figure out which one is most appropriate for you based on where you're at and what kind of help you need to publish your book.
Right. And with that, Matt, I want to give you the last word. Any last tip the bonus tip for this webinar?
Well, one thing that might be helpful, especially for anybody else like me who's OCD trying to make it through this entire thing, and that is listing those 7 points. Because and Pete and I love talking to each other just when we're hanging out here at Nelson, so we could talk together all day long, and we barely scratched the surface here. But when we looked at those 7 items heading into this, here is what they were. The first one being build your platform. We talked about that a little bit. Number 2, realize that great content alone will not equal publishing success. 3, marketing is a partnership now more than ever. Number 4, know the components of a good outline. Number 5, if you're attempting the traditional route, it's imperative that you find a good agent. You have to have one. Number 6, the more sample content you have, the better you'll be received. And number 7, don't be afraid of self-publishing. So thanks for the time today. I really enjoyed it.
Appreciate it, Matt. Appreciate it, Pete.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.